So I started as an intern at POGO and came back in 1993. Okay. I came back after having been an intern and a low-level researcher in 1993 to POGO. Dina had left and the organization had fallen on hard times. It was out of money, and Keith was the last employee, and he was trying to keep the organization alive. Where's Keith?
Right here.
Okay, we really...
Table 20.
I had never run an organization before. I'd never raised any money before, and I had just come from a job where my boss had told me that I wasn't smart enough to work on Capitol Hill. So my confidence was about as low as it could be, and I had a serious imposter syndrome fear of, what am I doing? And, obviously Dina had developed such a reputation for the organization on defense issues, but as was mentioned, in the interim years, the organization had changed its name and its mission, not to just defense issues, but the entire federal government. So I thought, so we have to do something. We have to get a hit on something that's not about defense. So I started scouring Capitol Hill and found some investigators who had been working on a boondoggle in Texas called the Superconducting Supercollider. This is a project which my parents are still unhappy about to this day, but that had doubled in its budget from $5 billion to $11 billion. And what the staff showed me was receipts that showed that some of the reasons why the contractor had been able to double its budget was because it was doing things like having an $11,000 party on Capitol Hill. So they gave us these receipts, and we put together this report. It looks so adorable with the binding. Yeah. So this is okay. So for the younger people to understand. So we put together this report, and we faxed our press release to the journalists who sent couriers to pick up this document. And then we got a little trade press article. And because of that trade press article, we got a call from a guy who said, "Just call me Ed." Ed worked on the project. I never knew his real name, and I don't even know if he was a government employee or worked for the contractor. But now remember, this was before cell phones, so we had to schedule calls because I had to be sitting at my desk when he was going to call. And we developed a pattern where he could call and tell me what was happening. And he was more and more despondent that it was Parsons Brinckerhoff, for those of you who care about who the contractor was, who just didn't care. And they were being obscene in his mind and how they were spending our money. And he was so unhappy to be a part of this. And he was assigned at that time to be on the review committee to look at a draft Department of Energy IG report on how the money had been spent on this project so far. And that, and he was telling me about this process and the fact that this draft IG report was just sitting there because the agency didn't want the final report to come out because it was so embarrassing. So in the end, he decided he was going to just send it to us. So what he did was he used the regular mail and a brown paper envelope and mailed us this draft report. And that report, let's see if this works. We put together a report and gave it to the Washington Post. So, pretty cool. Look, that's us, 1993, released yesterday by the Project On Government Oversight. So cool. But, what it showed was they were paying $56,000 for tropical plants and $122,000 for employee morale. Now, it's Texas, but it's not Afghanistan. So, it's ridiculous that this is happening. So this was on a Monday, And on the Thursday, the House held a vote. And there had been organizations, there was actually a whole coalition of people who were trying to kill the program. And we didn't have a position on whether the program was a good one or a bad one, but it was obvious that the contractor was completely taking advantage of the situation. But after 2 years of other groups working on this issue, we came out the report on the Monday. On the Thursday, the House had a vote and they killed the program. Big deal, really big deal for us. This is now Keith, me, and an intern. Then there's a knock on the door. The door of our, this is before what Jim saw, really dingy office. This was a building, actually Tom works at the spot where it used to stand. He's at Ropes and Gray. That corner was the most dingy of former apartment buildings. It was converted. It was a 2-room former apartment that had those noisy window air conditionings. And the knock on the door, we open the door, there's an agent at the door. He sort of opens his, I forget which side it was, I think it was this side. Those of you who are agents can tell me which I'm right. He opens his jacket to show us his gun and his badge and pushes his way into our little tiny dingy office. And to sort of give you a feel for it, so we had that noisy window air conditioning, and our window looked out at other windows with noisy window air conditioning, so there was sort of nothing to see. And so he pushes his way in, and he's asking us these questions to try to trick us into admitting who our source was, who was the person who gave us this document. He's asking us, did we get it faxed? What is the cover page? Could he see the, those of you who remember faxes, that the number on the top might have identified where it had come from, like we were stupid. And I can make fun of that now, because now, like, at least 8 or 9 times, we at POGO have had law enforcement come and try to bully their way into telling us who our sources were. But this was the first time for us. And we were totally terrified. It was really scary. But we threw him out. And we thought that was it. That wasn't it, because it's $11 billion. And as you guys know, that matters to a lot of people. So the Secretary of Energy at the time is brought up to Capitol Hill to testify about the POGO leak. And she's having to defend herself in front of the, as you might imagine, it was those members of Congress from Texas who were very fond of this project, and they were trying to get to the bottom of this. And she was actually very forcefully saying she's going to get to the bottom and find out how this terrible thing had happened. And I just want to remind you, this is still the Danielle who had the imposter syndrome, because I'd had that boss who had told me that I wasn't smart enough to work on Capitol Hill. So I go to this hearing, and I hear how she's going to sort of go after us, and I wait until the end of the hearing, she's walking out, and I come up to her, because this is before webcasts, you have to actually go to the hearing to watch a hearing, and I said, I'm the person you're talking about investigating, and you are trying to develop a reputation, it's Hazel O'Leary, for those of you who remember, of being pro-whistleblower. And she said, can we walk down the hall to the restroom? Men have been able to do this for years, but this is our turn. We've got to talk down there. So in my stall talk with the Secretary of Energy, I'm trying to get her to think about the fact that what she is describing as a leak is really a leaker, is a whistleblower who's outraged at how our money is being spent. And she just couldn't understand, or just wasn't willing to accept, that a whistleblower was blowing the whistle on her administration. She liked those whistleblowers who were raising issues on previous administrations. So in the end, they never discovered our source, and the program was killed. And a few weeks later, I got a call from Ed. It was my last call from Ed. I never knew Ed could be in this room. I don't know who Ed is. But he wanted me to know that he was going to be okay, that he had lost his job, but that's exactly what he had anticipated if things had gone the way he wanted it to go. He knew that if we were successful, that he was going to have to find something else, because he was so outraged at how things had gone. And that he wanted me to be reassured that he was going to be okay. So looking back on that episode, how far out of a comfort zone does someone have to be to sort of set in motion and engineer a plan that's actually going to deliberately eliminate your own job because you're so concerned about the public good. And I think about those demons that I'm still fighting from that boss who told me I wasn't smart enough. And I'm thinking about the fights that we at POGO continue to fight with law enforcement and the Justice Department and others and IGs who are trying to make us tell them who our sources were, and we won't. But I realize that they really pale in comparison to the real battles that the people on the inside that we're working with every day, like Ed, and like two of the men that you're going to be hearing from later, are fighting that are real to their lives. And it puts it in context. And that's why it's easy for me, it's a delight for me to go to work every day.